We put a club night on in East London. It just started as, if I'm really honest, just a fun little excuse for me and my best friend Amy, who can be here, to wear ridiculous clothes, be free and be ridiculous. And it seems that we hit on something quite big. And through that, we've almost become the sort of poster boy and poster girl for what I think is a new generation of gay, lesbian, trans people that don't want to fit within any box and just want to be free and just have a great time. That's why I'm here. However, are we post-gay? Abso-fucking-lutely not. I don't think we are. To think so narrow-mindedly is to think that we're post-gay when there's so much suffering and so much shit going on in this world is absolute tosh. And I think that we now have a responsibility, if anything, more than ever before, to honour all the people before us, and really only, you know, a generation, 2 generations before us that were fighting and really, really going through a huge amount of hardship to get us to this position now. We have a position in this country that is generally quite free to go out into the world and be militantly homosexual and scream it from every fucking hilltop.
Too right.
And that's all.
So Glyn was going to argue we were post-gay. So this is going to become apparent. All my panel are going to say the same thing, but that's fine. We'll just have a discussion. Julie?
No, we're not. You stole some of my best lines.
Sorry.
Typical man. I think that we're also not post-patriarchy. I just wanted to get that word in to remind everybody that we live under a patriarchal society. Now, I would argue, and this is my prep, that we're pre-gay. We've gone back to pre-gay. So not only are we not post-gay, but I think we've taken some huge steps backwards. I think we've made some great gains. But we now wish to be as straight as we possibly can, it would seem. We accept a Tory Prime Minister who says that he believes in equal marriage for all the right reasons, and we actually believe him, and we go along with this like sheep so that we can just be as respectable and indistinguishable from heterosexuals as possible. I think for many privileged gays, there is now a new closet which is a gilded cage of their own choice, where they don't wish to fight for any gay rights at all. They're not part of a gay or lesbian movement. They wish to be gay when it suits them, and they take no responsibility at all for younger people or people who live in, for example, the northeast of England, where there are barely any out gays and certainly very, very few proud gays. We argue in order to fight for rights, for legal rights and social rights and acceptance, we use the word tolerance. Fucking tolerance. Who wants to be tolerated? What an utter disgrace. And we say, look, we are as we are, we can't help it, we were born with a rogue gene. Do you honestly think we would be like this if we had a choice? Well, I would, because being a lesbian is utterly fabulous. And trust me, everyone in the room who doesn't know this firsthand, it's far better than the alternative. So I am absolutely determined to help everyone straight become gay, because you're all pre-gay, and that all the pre-gays that are actually gay or lesbian, to get some fucking pride back in yourself and in our movement.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ollie?
Hello. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name's Ollie Locke, and I did Made in Chelsea for an awfully long time. Far too long, some might say. It was 70 episodes, which means 70 hours of having to sit around all day watching Spencer Matthews shag women. So I did about 4 years of Made in Chelsea, and in my first season, I realised, I'd known for a while, but I was in a moment with a girlfriend, and I realised I didn't really like her anymore. And I thought, what am I going to do about it? And I spoke to some friends about it, and I realised that I fancied a man, and I was like, shit. I was like, what am I going to do? I'm on national TV. And I'd mentioned it to a producer, and I was sitting there without knowing this was gonna come up yet. And they said, okay, Ollie, potentially it's time, if you want to now, is to come out on camera if you want to. And I had an awful lot of support, actually, that's unfair, but there was, and I sat there and I was like, oh my God, I knew it was going to come out at some point because I had told them about it, but I didn't know it was going to be that day. I sat there and I was like, I can't believe this, I can't believe, what am I going to do? I was like, and then I went outside onto my little roof terrace and I thought about myself and I thought about everyone. I realised if there was anyone from the north of England or anywhere in Britain that was going to be helped by my story, then that is the right thing to do. Anyway, I came out, and without knowing at the time, it was the first person to come out on national TV, on reality TV in the world, and I didn't know that at the time, but I do now. Anyway, I've written a few things down more on the argument of this. If we were in fact post-gay, we wouldn't be having this debate entitled, "Are we post-gay?" as it wouldn't be of relevance. I feel that being a nondescript on sexuality at this present date is almost going back a step by not confronting your sexuality. I feel it's almost turning its back on what these years of campaigning to become equal and proud have quite rightfully achieved. It's only through the celebrities that won't define themselves to the press through personal reasons, and quite rightfully their choice, but in the grand scheme of human nature, ends us in debating whether we no longer need to come out. Where in reality, we are far from being in a position where coming out is not important anymore. In the big picture, having openly gay role models will lead us to a far closer and far quicker to the ideal of post-gay than those celebrities who choose not to use their status to help the sexually confused. In a world of not yet complete equality, having gay trademarks and celebrations such as the Pink List and Pride Festival, we open up a world to sexually confused people around the globe, witnessing sexuality celebrated and not being ostracized. I'd like to finish this by using my own experience in the press fascination for the last 4 years of interviews asking me if I was gay, straight, or bisexual. However, I'd love to stand a room here and argue to a knowing room that sexuality in the world is not an issue. I feel we are running before we can jog in a world of post-gay. I'm not saying that we are not taking a fast-pacing stride, but in fact we have a long way to go before sexuality is a non-entity in society and relationships.
Thank you very much for that, Ollie. Finally, Ivan, can we get your thoughts?
Thank you, Katie. I've got some notes here. By way of background, when I first agreed to do this, Katie contacted me to say, well, the first response was that I was in favour of the motion, that we are sort of post-gay. It's sort of my first reaction to this, but having been a campaigner all my life and feeling that lots of the issues are dealt with, in the UK, or from a London perspective, I was going to put, are we post-gay in London? And very much living in this bubble, I do have that sense that we are sort of post-gay. And then Katie phoned me and said, we haven't got enough people speaking against the motion, can you change your mind? And it turns out that now everyone's talking against it.
Do the old speech.
But the strange thing about having to rethink my original view is that I actually am now tending to agree with the panel that we are post-gay. We're not post-gay. But let me go back to how I, sort of some of my background and sort of how I sort of saw it happening. Because I saw us being sort of gay or needing to identify as gay because, well, two big things happened during my lifetime. One, there was just general, of course, it was illegal when I was until the day I was born. I was born in 1967, so until then, and it took an awful long time for it being decriminalised, for it to sink in or to be accepted, and of course it wasn't. And I grew up in a time, of course, my first business was helping people in get insurance and mortgages who were being discriminated against by insurance companies who weren't being allowed insurances or mortgages because of their sexuality. Now it would seem incredible that was allowed to happen, but at the time it was commonplace. Also at the time, we had HIV, and HIV was incurable. It was AIDS, and I encountered many people dying. But what that also did was it freed people in certain quarters to expose their hand, to show just what they really thought about gay people. And you had priests saying that this was God's punishment for being gay, and quite common, wasn't it? That kind of approach was quite common, And the great thing for us, and HIV was a terrible and remains really a terrible thing, even with the retrovirals. What it did for us was it brought us all together, and it made us decide that we had to take a view and had to come out and stand up. And until then, in a weird way, of course, there have been great campaigners, but a lot of us were sort of slightly more content to stand in the shadow. But this completely created a new imperative that couldn't be ignored. I have a lovely partner who's sitting in the audience and who's much younger than me.
How much?
Quite a bit.
Quite a lot.
A bit cliche. And he's what inspired me really to think that the world is becoming post-gay, because amongst his friends, of course, though he's very careful himself, he views, many people of his age group now view HIV as being completely sort of curable or dealable, just something you take a pill for, and so they don't place any of the significance. And also many of the issues have disappeared. In law now, we can get married. And so amongst his friends, and the people I meet through him, I'm seeing they're all playing sports, which I didn't. People from my age group didn't. We were like, they play football. They're doing triathlon. They're just blokey, straight acting, as it were, lads and girls who are untouched by this, who are untouched by the drama or the incredible prejudice that forced us to polarize. They also have apps like Grindr, and so they don't need to flag up the fact that they're gay in a particularly camp way. They don't need to, in a weird sort of way. I think living especially in a small environment, a village like Daffyd, the only gay in the village, there was a real case for needing to sort of slightly emasculate yourself, to be unthreatening, so that maybe a wayward gentleman who could be persuadable might make an approach when his mates weren't looking, and know it was safe to do so. Now none of this is necessary. I can get my Grindr up on my little app, and we just don't need those kind of flags anymore. So it's easy to feel that we are entering a post-gay, despite the Russian issue and all the things happening in Uganda and the polarisation and the radicalism. It's easy to feel that as opinion formers and as leaders of the world in style, as London as often is, we're moving away from the need to identify as gay, and I can see this happening. But what worries me now, and what I'm seeing more and more of, and what's, I think, crippling the London gay scene, is that this is all style over substance, and in fact, this straight acting is literally acting. And gay clubs and gay culture has become more important to young people than it was actually when I was growing up. With this acceptance has become this kind of bursting out on the gay scene, which seems to have been dominated or becoming dominated by drugs and crystal meth, chill-out parties, unsafe sex. And we have a new crisis approaching that is very gay. And if anything, I think that we've never been more gay as a gay culture, and we've never been more endangered by our sexuality. And it's very worrying. I didn't read my notes. I think I've said enough, probably.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, we can't all sit up here and agree. Let's start with you. No, hold on. You run a club night that is supposed to be a mix of, I've seen you go to Sink the Pink nights. You don't define it as a gay night. It's not a straight night. Like, anyone can turn up.
Yeah, we're at this crazy point with Sink the Pink where we never, ever expected, I'll be totally honest with you, where we get booked for corporate things. We'll go and do a gig for H&M, or we'll go to Glastonbury Festival, and in front of us, it's laden with big rugby boys and, secretaries from Kent, and they are loving it. And, therefore, we're crossing over to the mainstream. Is that a bad thing? I think absolutely not. If it means that we're reaching out and we're educating people, because that's what this is all about. It's about educating people and letting people, whether they fully understand it or not, but, we've got to take steps, and if that means, you know, me slut dropping for 4 minutes to Khalees milkshake while a whole room gets it, then that's sex.
But you do see it as a gay night?
It's a gay night, it's a straight night, it's a queer night.
So you are resisting the idea that it's gay or straight or one particular thing. You want it to be more sexually fluid, no?
Well, you touched on something I don't think is about sex, for a start. You know, many fluids do get sploshed, but I think this is more about queer mentality, what we're thinking about here. We are just saying, everybody is welcome, why not? Are we going to pull back on what we do? Because, you know, anyone who's been to Sink the Pink, we're pretty out there. I think clubbing is the gay fight now, and I truly believe with what you were saying there. I mean, I think that Grindr is the devil. I think that these apps are absolutely, possibly the most destructive thing that's ever happened to gay culture, because what it's doing is it's forcing gay society underground again. And with that, we're forcing it back underground. We're just accepting that all we are is primitive creatures that are only about sex. And the one thing that's fantastic about, for me, gay culture is the culture. It's about, we're in this amazing position now where we're accepted. Don't really like that, you know, terminology, but we are accepted. But we've been living in a blueprint of straight society. We've been doing, you know, we can get married, great, fuck off. We can also, you know, have kids, great. But what we're not doing is we're not building a gay or lesbian or LGBT, whatever you want to call it, social blueprint. And now is our time to do that. That's what we need to be doing. We don't need to be taking G, passing out in clubs and shagging people and getting back to an epidemic that nearly wiped out a whole generation in the first place.
Why on earth are we becoming so frightened to be gay and lesbian visibly? There was an argument that by getting married, we would subvert and queer marriage. No, marriage has just made us more straight. And I think for lesbians, it's quite different than it is for gay men, culturally, socially, politically. Because we have to deal with sexism. We already, if we come to this as feminists, have a culture and a politics. For lesbians, it's even more difficult because we find that the hedonistic culture of drug taking and Grindr sex is not necessarily the way lesbians are going to go, thank God. And so I think that there's more of a division than we pretend when we do this alphabet soup of LGBTQI. Actually, it's nowhere near as rainbow as we...
Do people want to be defined by their sexuality in that way?
I do.
I mean, no, but you're saying yourself, you're joking, you don't.
No, interesting point. Bisexuality is something that's there, and I feel that sometimes it's LGT. What does anyone ever know about bisexuality? When do you ever read about bisexuality?
It's just tucked in because they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, but it's limiting.
Yeah, but if you think about it, if you think about it in a way, think of Tom Daley initially came out as bisexual, fine, then he came out as gay. Jessie J came out and then went back in the closet. Whether it is, so many people come out as bisexual and they always say bi now, gay later. But whether it is bisexual, maybe the other three angles should sit there, parties should sit there and go, okay, the bisexual obviously maybe sitting there waiting to become gay. Why can't we give them a help as well? Because obviously that needs to be addressed. Because there are so many kids around the country that will come out as bisexual first. I don't know whether in 10 years I'll turn around and be like, actually, I'm gay. I realised I'm gay.
And so isn't that a problem that you have to say you're something? That for Ollie it was an issue, he had come out as gay, that then you have to own this label, and the label becomes limiting.
It means you haven't got flexibility. It was the press that had to sit there in every single argument, bar the gay press, may I add, that always asked me the question, are you gay? And says the gay press just didn't want to cover it. Which is true. It was only
why?
You know what? I don't know. In the nicest way possible, and I really didn't want to say this, and I've never said it, and it's a real cunty thing to say.
Say it.
However, I came out 4 years ago. Attitude did a piece that big, and it was 4 years later that someone wrote an article in the gay press about me. And I think that was out of order. Personally, I think it wasn't right.
Because you wouldn't own the label gay enough for them?
Well, personally, yes, I think so. Attitude did a piece this big, as I said. But it was 4 years later. It was only in September that Gay Times did a piece, and I sat there feeling shit for the last 3 or 4 years because I sat there and go, I wasn't accepted by the gay community. I didn't feel that. So why would I want to sit there and be like, okay, well, yeah, maybe I am getting more gay because I didn't have the support that I wanted.
But I think we've got to stop thinking about bisexuality as a stopgap as well. It's not a stopgap between, I'm going to dip my toe in, but, I'm not going to go fist first. I think that what we need to think about is that actually some people will live in that grey area all their life. And I'm not calling you grey, babe. But I'm saying that some people will forever spend their life, and that's great. Whatever. Who gives a shit?
Do none of you believe that we all live in the grey area then?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a great believer.
Well, that is post-gay, isn't it?
Hi, my name's Ollie Locke, and why don't you subscribe to the Hospital Club YouTube channel?